Forever. Dog.
Just between us. Hey. Just between us. Hey.
Hello, I'm Allison Raskin. I'm a writer, mental health advocate, and I'm not engaged.
Hi, I'm Gaby Dunn. I'm a writer, bicon, bisexual icon, weak, and I am engaged. Woo! I can't believe that we're not in person for this one.
I know, it's such a bummer.
Devastating.
I want to see that ring, baby. Look. Oh, it's so pretty.
It's a
Do you love it?
sapphire. Yeah, it's a sapphire. I wanted a dark stone. It's also so funny because Mal tricked me by being like, showed me a bunch of rings from their grandma and was like, do you like any of these? Like a year ago. And I was like, this one and this one are nice. I love a dark stone. And then they were like, tricked. I tricked you. They had me like secretly, they like were gauging my interest.
Oh, wait, so you had basically selected that ring from the ones they showed you?
Yeah, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. They were just like, do you like any of these? And I was like, oh, I like this one and this one. And then they just filed it away.
Love it. Love that for you.
We're going to talk to them about the whole thing during topics. But one of the things that like during the engagement that made me like start crying was the grandmother whose ring it is. She's passed away. And they said that they asked their grandfather, who's 94, who I actually get along with really well, like asked him, like, is it okay if I use Grandma Terry's ring to propose to Gaby? And I was like, this has made me lose it.
Was he excited that Mal was doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God. And then I just kept being like, Marty knows. Who cares? But yeah.
This is Just Between Us, a variety show filled with heartfelt advice,
ridiculous games,
and brutal honesty. We have got a great episode for everyone. As we mentioned, later, Mal will be joining us for topics to dive into the engagement story, give us all the tea there.
And later, we're going to be asking Nona Willis Aronowitz some tough questions about her book, Bad Sex. And also, both Allison and I love her.
But first, we have got to answer our listener's question. And you know what that means? Hit it! International question! International question! International question! Anna, Rio, Brazil. A true international if I've ever seen one. As they mentioned, here we go. Hey, Allison and Gaby. Real international question here from Rio, Brazil. I've been watching you guys on YouTube for years now. I wanted to say I really appreciate you both. If I'm feeling down, watching your videos always makes me laugh and gives me perspective. I started watching as a wee 16-year-old, realizing my pansexuality, but also relating so much to Allison's personality. And now I'm graduating from university.
Hey!
However, it's been incredibly difficult for me. I studied film and television, and I've realized through the last few years that in this sort of industry, it's really important to make connections if you want a job. However, I'm not a cool person. I have social anxiety and just generally am an introvert and haven't made many friends. The pandemic hasn't helped either. Now I'm about to graduate, can't seem to find even an internship, have no career prospects, and feel incredibly anxious and stupid, wondering if I chose the wrong area of study, even though I love it. I don't feel like I have talent and feel like I don't belong with these cool, outgoing, extroverted, creative people. I was wondering if you guys have any advice for people in my situation and wanted to know if getting out of college into the real world was as much of a nightmare for you as it has been for me. Looking back, what do you think you did right and what would you have done differently? This might be a lot and I get if it's not right for the show. Thanks so much anyway. I love you guys. Bye.
You think that something that's a lot is not right for this show? What was your experience, Allison?
I was really lucky in that I was able to do an internship right after I graduated because my parents were helping me out financially. So that already makes it so that my experience is probably not super helpful or relatable to a lot of people. But I interviewed for this assistant job. Oh, no, actually, I took this really weird job right out of college with a guy who ended up being in the Swedish mafia.
The band?
Yeah. No, the mafia.
What? Say more about that. Can you?
Yes. So I took this job that was like with this like startup company that was like, I think the concept was that like you would like pitch your idea online, and then if people liked it, then they would help you fund it, which is like very similar to ideas that actually like became popular, like, GoFundMe or whatever, Kickstarter. But it was like a very like small, weird company. And then when I was there, I Googled the guy's name, which I obviously should have done before that, and found out that like his yacht had been stormed and they'd found all this weapons, and he like had clear ties to the Swedish mafia.
Was he Swedish?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And so what did you do after that?
I quit not that long after. It was also just like not a good job. And my mom and sister had to sit me down and be like, don't do this. And then I interviewed for this assistant position. I didn't get it. I took this unpaid internship, which is again where my financial privilege came in, and then I was able to do that. And then I think that the person, that assistant job I had interviewed for, didn't work out. The guy like got fired within like a week or left within a week or two. And so I was the second choice. And so then I got hired as an assistant at a management company, which is what I did for a year.
Wow.
So wild stuff.
What did I do? Okay, so I left college and I had been working at the Boston Globe in their co-op program, which shout out to the Boston Globe. They paid really well, actually. I worked long hours, but my rent at the time was $500 and I made $1,000 a month. So I had $500 for my rent, and then I had $500, which I'd never had in my life to like use. To me, I was like, I'm rich. And I have money at the end of the month, and I'm like, it was really nice of them that they paid interns in that way, especially in like 2008, 2009 when people didn't. And then I came to New York and I had an internship, and I slowly realized that everyone, like I had an internship at The Daily Show, and I slowly realized that everyone there, I went there thinking I would be a journalist, and I realized that everyone there was a comedian. And I was like, oh, I've fundamentally misunderstood this entire show. And I also I ended up not being able to like stay on really much longer than the actual like internship because I didn't have any money and I was pawning everything I own, and it was really bad. So in terms of like advice, it's hard because I went so hard. Like, right, like looking back, I would be like, you didn't have to work that hard. You made yourself sick. You were like doing all this stuff that was so toxic and awful. And like you worked nonstop. You never slept. I was like, at one point, like I talk about this in the Bad with Money book that I wrote, but like at one point I was like, I don't have any money and I'm out of clothes for this internship. And I just attempted to shoplift from an Urban Outfitters and I got caught. Like I was not doing well mentally. And so, like, I think back on that and I'm like, oh my God, like, this hustle culture is so toxic. Like, don't grind yourself down to the bone. Don't, like, sleep, on your friend's random couch because you have nowhere to go, whatever. But at the same time, doing all of that is how I got here. So it's hard for me to be like, don't do that it's bad and I know it's bad now, but am I saying it's bad from a position of I came out the other side with a career? You know what I mean? It's hard to say don't do all of these really horrible things, horrible in the sense of like bad for your mental health and bad for your physical health, and work and never stop working when I have the things that I wanted mostly.
Well, I think Anna is not so much talking about the hustle culture of it all, but more about the networking of
That's
it
what
all.
I mean.
And but that's not sleeping on your friend's couch. That's more like having to create relationships in order to get jobs, which I think is not necessarily true of every industry in the way that it is true of this industry.
What I'm talking about is staying out at shows or staying out at parties to network and meet people and make friends. I would be in bed in my pajamas and I would see on Twitter that a comedian I wanted to meet was performing at 11 p.m. at a show like 45 minutes away, and I'd put on clothes and go.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think we have very different relationships to networking where like you're very good at it and have done a lot of it. And it's always not felt natural to me and it's not a strength of mine. And I hate feeling like relationships are transactional. I hate feeling like things are fake. Like I don't like talking to people I don't actually like, and so, I guess what I would say about that is it can feel like the networking aspect is so misaligned with who you are. And then it is also somewhat separate from what you want to do.
I know.
But I think a way of maybe thinking about it is it's one component of your job, right? And so if you feel like you are really creative and that you love making stuff and that you want to work in this field, it's almost like how other people like hate doing their expenses, just sort of seeing it as a part of this thing, and you don't need to naturally be good at it in order to learn how to do it. But then it's always the cost benefit, right? Like there is the reality that like maybe the way that this industry is set up is not aligned with who you are, and to try to do it anyway just causes such discomfort. There's a lot of different ways to have a creative life. Like the thing that's really cool about like technology and the advancements of technology and social media is like you can always be creating. You don't need to be working in a traditional TV or film job in order to be making content. So that's really what I would say is like I would really focus on making stuff right now. And like it's like a two-pronged approach of like make a lot of stuff, do stuff that you care about, flex those muscles, and 2, try the networking, but don't go into it thinking I have to like this or that it has to feel natural to me. Instead, view it as this thing that is like annoying, but a part of it. And then right out of college, like so few people get jobs in their chosen industry right out of college. Like you just never know what's going to happen. A lot of times you have to just keep grinding, keep seeing, what happens. And I think we have this sense that if something doesn't happen immediately, then we're not a good fit. But as I say to myself all the time when I'm having a spiral, this industry and really very few industries are actually they're not meritocracies. It is not like, oh, I'm the best and therefore I will have a good career. That almost doesn't matter at all. It's not about your talent. It's not about how much you can deliver. There's such a luck component to it. So if you haven't had that luck hit you yet, it doesn't matter how good you are. So seeing like these rejections, not so much as proof that you're not good at what you want to do, but instead proof that this isn't a meritocracy and that sometimes it's just throwing so many things at the wall so that you can get lucky with one of them.
Yeah, I was going to say 2 things. One, you saying you don't feel like you're talented. That's imposter syndrome. Like all these people that you're viewing as so talented and creative and extroverted, like maybe they are, but also a lot of people are full of shit. And like a lot of this industry is like built on lies. And like people will post things or like make things seem like I do it, make things seem like they're more important or bigger than they are. And like it's just like comparison politics, and it's full of shit. It's not real. It's almost designed to make other people feel bad in some way, or to like present a pretty picture that is just like conveniently leaves out all of the insecurity and rejection and hardship. 2, I would say like making stuff on your own, some of that stuff like hits, and these people it's luck meeting preparedness. So like a lot of times I'll see people who like make something and it does really, and it hits, but then they haven't been working on like having their scripts or having their shorts or having, their things ready for when that happens, and they're completely overwhelmed. So it is luck, but it's also being prepared and having the things ready for when something happens, or if something happens, being prepared when luck comes. And like, if you love to create and you said you love it, then like just be doing that. And then almost like, it's hard to say this, but almost like believing that you have talent is irrelevant. Like you are seeing the highlight reel of these people. You are seeing them at their most extroverted, at their most whatever. And if you don't want to engage with those people, sometimes I go to an industry event and I feel great. Sometimes I go to an industry event and I'm like, everyone is garbage. I don't know how to explain it, but like a lot of it is just like keeping your head down and doing your work. And like going out and meeting people. And if you meet people feeling like, okay, so I met some people tonight that sucked, But you know what? Then sometimes like you go out and you're like, I met one person that I feel like really I like their work and I really actually respect them. And then holding on to that person. And I've had a lot of luck too of meeting someone that I really respected their work and getting along with them, and then meeting that person's friends, and then meeting that person's collaborators. And then if I see something, not just random networking, but like if I see a short and I'm like, I really liked this short, reaching out to the person who made it. And then instead of just going to a party, being like, hey, specific person, I watched your film and I really enjoyed it. Can we talk? And I've had a lot of luck with that because it's targeted networking. It's specific. It's the people you respect.
I think we also have this idea that like creativity and creative talent is a fixed thing.
Absolutely not.
That either you have it or you don't. But it's like anything else. Like it's a muscle that you can build up. Like, yeah, I think some people have a predisposition for it, but where they start isn't where they end. And so if there are parts of you that you're like, oh, I'm not as good at dialogue, or I don't quite understand cinematography as well as I think that I should. Like, those are things that you can learn. So where you start right out of college is not like the end of your creative journey. So cutting yourself some slack and saying like, okay, like, oh, I've made something I didn't like that much, but what did I learn from that thing I didn't like that much? And what am I going to do differently next time?
Yeah, totally. And reach out to people in terms of networking, like reach out to people that you're like, you know what, this person really does understand cinematography. Or I really like the way this person writes dialogue. People love to be flattered.
Yeah. That's a great networking tip. Is just kiss people's asses. And I know it can seem gross and weird, but whatever. It's like you're doing a nice thing because you're making their day.
Exactly.
Well, hopefully that was helpful. If you want to submit your international question, you can send it to justbetweenuspod@gmail.com. That's justbetweenuspod@gmail.com.
Up next, we've got an exciting interview with our highly esteemed guest, Nona Willis Aronowitz. Stay tuned. I love having smooth, glowing skin in the summer. I love to go down to the lake by my cabin, and I want to have the most dewy skin on that beach, baby. And that's why with the right products, you can get a full body glow.
Osea skincare and body care products help get your skin ready for every summer look, because dewy summer skin isn't just for your face.
Especially when you're outside at this time of the year and your skin can get really dry, you need some extra TLC. It's important to prep your skin to stay hydrated and smooth with safe, clean products. Osea skin products help nourish, soften, and smooth your skin to keep you glowing from head to toe.
Experience radiant summer skin with Osea's Undaria Algae Body Oil.
Keep skin soft and glowing with Undaria Algae, Acai Pulp, and Babasu Seed Oil.
I honestly love this body oil because it's rich, never greasy, and it has a sunny citrus smell with notes of sweet passion fruit. I love to slather it on right after a shower.
Find your new skincare and body care favorites at OseaMalibu.com and get a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with promo code JustBetweenUs.
You'll get free samples with every order, and orders over $50 get free shipping.
You're going to want it all.
Go to OSEAMalibu.com, promo code JustBetweenUs.
Just between us.
Welcome back to Just Between Us. It's time for the juiciest, most scandalous, controversial segment known to all of podcasting. Tough questions.
This week on the show, our guest is Nona Willis Aronowitz, who is a writer, editor, and author. Her book, Bad Sex, is a memoir social history blend that examines the enduring barriers to true sexual freedom. Nona has a bi-weekly sex and love advice column for Teen Vogue and has written for publications like The New York Times, The Cut, Elle, Vice, and Playboy. Nona currently splits her time between NYC and Tannersville, New York, and also is a friend of the pod.
A friend of us. We know her, we love her. We're excited for today.
An icon, a legend, the best editor I've ever had, truly.
Oh my God, thank you. Actually, Gaby, you're sort of anonymously quoted on my website, on my editor tab, as saying that you hated all other editors, you loved me, but you hated all other editors.
And that's true. And I'll say that, I think they could sense it. All the other editors knew how I felt.
It's a bit misanthropic, but I will take it.
Yeah, you're the best one. By a mile. I'll stand by that right now.
So we would love to dive into like what you uncovered during the research of this book, because I imagine some things were expected, but like what was some of like the most unexpected takeaways you had?
Sure. Well, my research was kind of twofold. One was historical research. I was looking into archives. I was looking into history books. It was actually deep COVID at the time, so it was not as archivy as I wanted it to be, but I had professors emailing me drafts of essays and all kinds of things that I wouldn't have been able to find. It was a kind of a fun process. So that was one element of it. But then the other element was really delving into my mother's history and personal life. And that entailed, and also to a smaller extent, my father's history and personal life. And that was interviewing her ex-boyfriends and my dad's ex-wife, which was super interesting, talking to her friends and actually visiting her archives and reading a bunch of her diary entries. And as you can imagine, one process was sort of more emotional than the other, but both actually had surprises. I mean, I had no idea about how vulnerable and emotional my mother was. I think she had this kind of performed vulnerability in her work. She was an early pro-sex feminist, and part of what she did was cull from her personal life and put it in context of what was going on politically. But she did kind of keep herself at a remove, at least compared to her very, very intensely emotional journal entries. And so that was something that took me aback. Just reading about her emotional turmoil. She was very private and kept kind of intense boundaries with me. And she died when I was 22. So I was really not an adult while she was alive. And that was something that was super surprising. But the historical process was surprising too. I mean, I discovered characters from history that I had no idea existed. And if you look at my proposal, which is like, as you probably both know, they're just like deeply bizarre documents that have little to do with what ends up happening in the book. But I had just totally different characters in there. I'll give you an example. Like I was assuming that for my marriage chapter about the history of marriage, I was going to use somebody like Virginia Woodhull, who was a very ardent proponent of free love in the 1800s. But I actually discovered a much lesser known free love feminist, Mary Gove Nichols, who had a much more ambivalent narrative and whose narrative really dovetailed with what I went through with my kind of ambiguous and ambivalent marriage. And then I went down the rabbit hole with Mary Gove Nichols and was like emailing scholars about her and really just learning a lot about the details of her life. And that was a wonderful surprise. And that kind of happened again and again. So there were a lot of surprises, is what I'm trying to say.
Why did you title the book Bad Sex?
Well, so there's the bad sex of my marriage, and that's sort of the text. But then the subtext of bad sex is that there are a lot of things that contribute to messing up our intimate lives, both our sex lives and our romantic lives, which aren't necessarily the same thing. And so bad sex is a stand-in of all the obstacles and dilemmas that we, especially women, have to go through before we can discover our true desires.
What was that like to write about, your own marriage and your own experience with this?
Oh, I mean, I had just enough distance from it to do it, but I didn't have that much distance. I think when I first started to conceive of this book, I'd only been broken up with my husband for 2 years. And that was, I think, not enough distance to know what that relationship really meant to me and what that breakup really meant to me. But by the time I was truly writing this book, it was, I guess, early 2020. And I think I did have some perspective on it. It'd been several years. I was in another relationship and I saw kind of the whole arc of me for a long, long time having doubts of this relationship and then finally biting the bullet and breaking it off and then going through a crazy tumultuous breakup, which I think really took like a full year to run its course. And then there was the payoff, which was, not a happily ever after. There is no such thing. There's no walk off into the sunset moment in this book. But I think I am closer to my true desires by doing that. But it wasn't easy. I mean, I think I had an idea of how vulnerable I was going to be. And then I had to get more vulnerable and then more vulnerable. And there were also other people too. I mean, especially my ex-husband, I worried about how he was going to feel about this. And I still love him. I mean, I wouldn't say we're like friends, but we still have a connection. And I didn't want to hurt him. And he was just the most gracious person on the face of the earth. Gabby, you know him.
I do.
Actually, yeah,
I do.
You met. And he was super gracious. He is a filmmaker and he understood the importance of people being able to tell their own stories. And he was like, listen, it's your story and you should tell it however you want it. But that was something that was really difficult and nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Did you show him like early chapters and make sure he was comfortable with what was in it? Or was it sort of like,
go with God? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of offered and then he was like, I don't know if I want to read it. I don't know if I'm ready. And I actually have sent him the completed book in PDF form and he's only read the intro. And I respect that. He's like, I can't handle it at this moment, but he's like, I trust you, basically.
Yeah.
And that was a really lovely gift, And I think I was fair to him. In early drafts, my friends were actually like, I think you have to explain a little bit more why you broke up with him because you're making him look too good because he's not like the villain of the story. You know what I mean? So I did have to really explain myself. And that was actually super difficult because there wasn't, the bad sex of the title is one reason, but just the connection was off. And it's hard to really explain that, especially somebody who's been so good to you and so loyal and so supportive to you. It can still be a bad match.
Mm-hmm. Was the connection off primarily like in the bedroom and then having to realize that like that is a priority for you? Or did you feel that throughout your relationship?
I mean, the connection was off in the bedroom and that made me realize that that was a priority for sure. But I think if everything else was perfect and that was the only problem, we probably could have worked it out. Like we probably could have had a more honest version of the open relationship that we had. I think if you have a really strong emotional and intellectual connection and a weak sexual connection, that's like, you're doing okay. Like that's like, the majority of your relationship is good. But I think also the other connections were weaker than I thought. It's just that the sexual connection being weak was sort of a gateway into me realizing this person is great, but they're not the person that I want to be with. And this is not the life that I want to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. I've had situations where like where I've like naively thought like, oh, we're still sleeping together and the sex is still good. So even though everything else is falling apart, like we're not breaking up. And then like we were breaking up. Like there's like, it's this thing where like, I think sometimes it goes away in people or it's not working out in that aspect. And people think like, well, we have this emotional connection, so we don't need this other thing. Or they take the sex as like, this is good. So we don't need to like be compatible in any other way. It's like two sides to it that I think sometimes you can get blindsided either way because you're like, well, we have this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the inverse can definitely happen. There is somebody in my book that essentially, this is a very heterosexual term, but I felt very dickmatized by him. I was so sexually into him and fulfilled by him that I ignored a lot of other things that were huge, huge red flags. And it just sort of shows, granted, I have to say that was like a rebound relationship and 99% of rebound relationships are just destined to fail because the person going through the breakup is still kind of in a tizzy. And that was certainly true for me. But I think beyond that, I was prioritizing sexual exploration and sexual fulfillment so much that I was ignoring all kinds of other things. And ultimately, I don't regret it because it was kind of a wonderful, heady experience, but it did cause me a huge amount of pain.
How do we define rebound relationships? Because it's interesting. Like, my partner and I got together like 3 months after my broken engagement. And so in some ways that's like, oh, like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I wasn't healed. I wasn't like completely over it, but like I'm wondering like how you would define rebound and saying that they mostly fail.
For the record, I don't think John is a rebound.
But if you look at like the way people think about it,
Yeah.
right? It's my first relationship after like a major trauma.
Yeah.
It was pretty quickly afterwards. It's interesting. It's something I've definitely like thought about. And I've asked him if like he was worried about being that, you know, and he's so confident. He was like, no, not really.
Well, just for some perspective, I met this person a day after I moved out of our apartment. It was like I moved out of our apartment on Friday of Labor Day weekend. And by Saturday at like 2 a.m., I was meeting up with this guy in like the depths of Brooklyn. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And also, I think rebounds are very clearly a reaction to your relationship. They have to be seen in context of the relationship that you just left. And this person was somebody who I had really good sex with. And so I chased that. And also, I mean, I knew from the beginning that he was not a forever match, but I still wanted to pursue it because it was exactly what I needed after years of feeling sexually unfulfilled with my partner. So I do think that relationships that start shortly after a breakup can work, but in that manic stage of like the first few weeks when you really I wasn't even totally like 100% broken up with my husband yet. Like we hadn't actually said the words of like, this is actually over. I think the premise was like, I need some space and like, let's talk in October. And then I was like immediately like on the apps and like having sex and just acting, you know, very messy, you know, as the kids say. So that's like what I'm talking about. I met my current partner 9 months after this relationship. And considering my marriage, the whole thing from start to finish was like more than 8 years long. 9 months is pretty quick also, but I don't consider my current partner a rebound at all.
I think what you said about it being in reaction to, you know, like of like the going like the opposite way. Like, you know, my ex and John have a lot of similarities, but that made sense to me because I was like, I was happy in that relationship and I had, you know, and so if I had gone and found someone that was the complete opposite, that would have just been in reaction instead of like true to what I was actually looking for.
Now, hold on. John is blonde.
Interesting.
He is blonde, yeah.
He is blonde.
So physically different?
They're very
physically different, yeah.
Fair.
But they have a lot of the same interests. Like they, you know, like they're, you know, they're not like polar opposites to each other. But I don't think that would have not been right for me because in a lot of ways I was close to what I was looking for in my last relationship, but obviously not quite there.
Right.
So I was wondering, like, going through interviewing your mom's ex-boyfriends and stuff, did you find like similarities between you and her, or like how did that make you feel?
I don't think that we conducted relationships all that similarly. I think she was the heartbreaker in a lot of her relationships. She was the one who broke it off over and over again, it seems. She had a relationship in her first of all, she had a marriage when she was in her late teens, which was very typical of 1960. And she broke it off with that guy. Then she had a relationship with this guy, Bob, who's in the book. And he was very in love with her and very devastated when she left. And the person she left Bob for, she broke up with also. And so I think she was the one leaving broken hearts in her wake. And I think up until I broke up with my husband, I hadn't really been that person. I had always been the one who was suppressing stronger feelings than I was letting on. And I had a lot of sort of situationships and I was accepting less than I wanted. And then I stayed in this partnership for 8 years. So there, in many ways, there's not too much symmetry with the way that my mom and I conducted relationships. But when I was trying to drum up the courage to break up with my husband, I found a lot of inspiration in her. Like I I decided maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should break my MO in order to be happy and be a little bit more like my mom, who obviously prioritized her desires over and over again, which is really admirable.
Is it strange to see your mother as a sexual being, or because of her work, had you always seen her that way?
I mean, on a personal level, she was rather shy. I wouldn't say that she was this like sexual MILF, you know, like it was very hard for me to think of her as a sexual being when she was alive and when I was a teen. But you look at younger pictures of her, and some of them at this point, I've now been those ages. I see a picture of her when she was 27 and I see my 27-year-old self. And then I see a picture of her still looking super fly at like 38. And I'm now 38. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I get it now. She doesn't seem like so old and like dorky to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I still don't like thinking about like my parents having sex. Like, that's gross to me. But her as a sexual being is normal. And she's I mean, she wasn't that explicit about her sex life in her writing, but she certainly made it clear that she was a sexual person and that was extremely important to her and extremely important to her politics.
Yeah. In what ways?
Just that, like, the beginning of the second wave feminist movement for many women was being in these consciousness raising sessions where you could be really honest about your misgivings. And there were a lot of sessions devoted to sex. And I think that was a real, what we talk about, you know, an aha moment or a click moment. And for her, that was a real click moment. I feel like she had grown up in the repressive 50s and had a lot of shame and guilt and repression around sex. And for her, this political moment, this germ of a political movement was also a supremely sexy moment for her. And she felt really exhilarated. And despite the fact that the sexual revolution still had all kinds of double standards, and it was really still through the male lens, at least until feminism took off, she still found a huge amount of freedom through it. So I think it was really key to her politics. Pleasure was really key to her politics. I think she thought of the feminist movement as ultimately about pleasure and happiness, not just about, oh, we'll get all the rights that men have, but also we will finally be able to pursue happiness on our own terms. And I think sex is a huge part of that.
And in your research, how does that square with like today, 2022?
I still think that pleasure should be a huge part of feminist politics, and it sometimes is and sometimes isn't. I think that now pleasure is often really depoliticized. It's kind of like currently in the category of like self-care and wellness. You know, like I see a lot of like Instagram, like,
oh God,
stuff about orgasms, and it's very kind of like, it's depoliticized. And I don't think orgasms are always should always be politicized, but I still think that women and other people with other marginalized identities still are living in this world where straight men dictate the terms of sexuality. And so when those people are actively and consciously choosing something else, that isn't on some level a political act. So fulfilling your desires as somebody who, you know, is defying the default of culture, that's just automatically transgressive to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been thinking more about the importance of prioritizing pleasure in your life, and not just, you know, sexual pleasure, but all types of pleasure. And I think right now we're in a place where life is really hard and bad things are happening all of the time. And, you know, even if maybe your personal situation is going well, there's this sense of like, but should I even be happy when I know so many people are suffering and the climate is on the brink of collapse? And there's this sense of like, it almost feels like it is ignorant or selfish to indulge in pleasure with everything that is going on. But I think that we need to like reprioritize it. And like so much of like your mental health and just like your ability to feel alive and grounded and is by tapping into joy and by finding these moments of pleasure and not feeling guilty for that, but instead like viewing that as something that keeps you going.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to put on my historian hat and say
Yes.
that's always kind of been a concern on the left. If you go back to the 1960s, where there were just this explosion of social movements that were dealing with very serious life and death issues, both feminism and civil rights movement and the anti-war movement, and the counterculture, and they were all kind of bubbling up. A lot of people were saying that pleasure was self-indulgent. There's so much other stuff going on in the world. How can you think about pleasure at a time like this? But I think my mother and her cohort were saying, I mean, there's a quote that I might slightly butcher, but there's a quote that's actually on my mom's headstone that says, it's the potential for happiness that is the radical thing.
Wow.
While the morality of sacrifice is an age-old weapon of rulers. It's like sacrifice has never sort of begat radical change. It's always kind of been a tool of oppression. And I think that still applies today.
Whoa.
Definitely.
If you deny yourself happiness, it's not going to like make somebody else happy also. So the potential for happiness is still radical, I think.
What does your relationship look like now that's so different?
Different from my marriage or different from when it first started?
From your
Because
marriage?
both things are true.
Tell me everything.
Well, I mean, okay, first I'll say how my relationship is so different from my marriage is, first of all, it was very sex forward from the beginning. I think we had an extremely intense sexual connection, which is something that I really deeply desired. And then an emotional and intellectual connection came from there rather than the other way around. And I wasn't looking for a relationship in the way that I was sort of looking for a relationship, or I was looking for commitment when I met Aaron, my ex. I think that that's a really big difference. It's not bad to want commitment. It's not bad to want a relationship. But I think in my particular case, I was just like, okay, great. Somebody wants to commit to me. Like, I will contort myself into this relationship, even though I think from like an early, once the honeymoon period wore off, I really did know that it was not quite right. So I did have early signs of knowing that it wasn't quite right. Whereas this was sort of the opposite. It was sort of just like unexpected and something that didn't seem right on paper. This person is younger than me. He at the time was going to business school, which like really confounded me. It turns out he's like a democratic socialist like everybody else, but he also was going to business school, and he was like going to this church in Williamsburg also, even though he's half Jewish and was raised secular. And I was like, this Christian guy in business school who's 6 years younger than me, like, what? But it turns out he's incredibly, well, like I said, we had just a really wonderful sexual connection. But beyond that, he was just the most kind of fascinating, smart, emotional person that I just had a very strong connection with almost immediately. We fell very deeply in love, sort of almost despite myself. I didn't really want a relationship at the time. So I think the premise of the whole relationship is really different than my husband. That said, I was writing about the beginning of the relationship in the book, but we've been together for 5 years now. We have a baby. We lived together. We went through the whole pandemic together. We went through a pregnancy together. All of that can like really fuck with your sexual connection. And I still think, for the record, that we have a great one, but it's like, there was a lot of challenges of just like, how do you navigate all of these different changes when like, you have this like beautiful kind of whirlwind romance, but then like you have to stop, as like my partner would say, he loves sort of like metaphors and analogies. He's like, you have to stop eventually looking at each other and eventually start walking forward side by side.
Ooh,
if
I
you're
love
going to build
that.
a life. Yeah, like if you're going to build a life rather than just like be consumed with each other forever, like you can't just like be intertwined in bed forever. You have to kind of also, if you really want to have a life with someone, like figure out what that looks like too. So that's been a real challenge. I mean, I still love him. And of course we're doing it. We have a 3-month-old baby who's currently crying. It's like making my heart hurt. But like, it just looks very different than, I mean, the priorities in my book are like not my priorities at the moment, frankly. I mean, I don't really recognize the person from that book, just like what I said in my book, that I don't recognize the person from before the book started. You know, I don't recognize the person from 2015 or whatever.
Does that feel like a betrayal to yourself, or do you feel like you've just changed?
No, it doesn't feel like a betrayal. I think one of the main discoveries in this book is that we will always be changing, especially when it comes to sex. It's really something you can't pin down. What you are turned on by 3 years ago might be completely repellent to you now, or you just really might not recognize that mind state, and that's cool and that's okay. That's actually a wonderful thing, and that's what makes sex so fascinating to me.
It is ever changing.
We're going to take a quick break, but stick around. Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp.
How we care for our minds affects how we experience life, so it's important to invest time and care into keeping them healthy.
I know that when my mental health is off, everything is off. It's hard for me to enjoy things. I'm irritable. I'm anxious. I'm on the verge of tears. And that is always like a signal to me that I need to put in a little more time and effort into caring for my mental health.
I've been in therapy for years, and therapy is irreplaceable. It has been one of the most helpful things in my life. I cannot recommend it enough.
And BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat-only therapy sessions. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to.
It's much more affordable than in-person therapy.
And you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours.
Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/justbetweenus.
That's betterhelp.com/justbetweenus.
Just between us.
And we're back.
As someone writing a book about marriage, do you guys talk about getting married?
You know, we were going to actually get married for health insurance. I was going to have another health insurance marriage because of mostly because of my baby. Yeah. I mean, we were actually
America.
I know, right? Seriously, it's so pathetic. It's so pathetic. However, like 3 weeks before the baby was born, Dom, my partner, got laid off. And so I was like, well, I guess we don't have to get married now because I don't have to like be with you for the insurance. And he got Medicaid. And if we had gotten married, then he wouldn't have qualified for Medicaid.
Oh my
so it's a whole dance. Yeah, I know. So we might get married. I know it's awful. But basically we have had like private sort of like a commitment together that has nothing to do with the state or like a piece of paper. So I am like committed to him for the long haul.
It's so interesting. So many couples I've interviewed have been motivated by health insurance and legal reasons versus
100%.
like the sanctity of marriage.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got engaged a week ago.
I know, I saw that.
And like we talk endlessly about WGA health insurance. The Writers Guild, they have great health insurance. We can put Mal on my health insurance. Like, why is that the number one?
Seriously.
Ugh.
I know. I mean, I do think there's something really romantic. I think that's actually sort of what marriage means to me, like Dom's same analogy of like turning forward side by side and walking into the world together. Like that's kind of what marriage or like real commitment means to me. But like the wedding industrial complex is super weird to me. And also I do feel a little bit loath to get the state involved in my relationship. But of course, like I am going, as soon as like he gets a good job with good health insurance, I'm gonna like marry him. Why not?
Right. And we think of it as like, Mal and I think of it as taking care of each other. Like if something happened to me, you know, if I get, you know, God forbid, get into some sort of accident, like you know, we want to be able to like be the primary for each other. So that's like a huge motivating factor.
Yes.
This has been so wonderful. And now I must ask, would you like to play a game show?
Absolutely. What do you got for me?
This game is called Hypotheticals. I'm going to give you and Gaby a series of hypothetical situations. You can ask any clarifying questions you might have, and then you tell me what you would do in that situation, and I pick my favorite answer.
Okay.
So the first game is America's favorite game show. Would you stay with this cheater? You find out that your partner of 7 years set up a Hinge account for their best friend who suffers from low confidence.
Okay.
This would all be fine, except your partner has control of the account and starts messaging multiple people, pretending to be their friend. And one of the conversations has turned sexual. They think this is all okay because they are just setting their friend up for success and are handing over the reins soon. Would you stay with this cheater?
I mean, if anybody's read my book, they know that I'm very skeptical of monogamy. And I think the terms of relationships need to be very clearly spelled out. I think that even the term cheater kind of sets off my spidey sense. I personally wouldn't care about that. No offense. I mean, as a non-monogamous person, I would not. I just, the level of lying is the only thing that I would be worried about.
This is what I'm concerned about, is that these people think that they're getting to know someone they're not actually getting to know. So I don't see how this helps my partner's best friend in any way, because they're going to meet up with someone who's totally different. I mean, who might not even, now they have to study what they said. What if they said they were into something sexually they're not actually into? What if, like, they had some sort of inside joke that now this person has to pretend? And then those people get married, and then how long does my partner have to lie and say it wasn't them? This is very stressful.
Yeah, I think the issue is this helping out the friend, not is this person cheating on me? I think, like, they got to work it out.
It's not.
It's not really. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not.
You can
I agree.
Also, you can set up the profile, and then you gotta let them handle it. And they can screw it up or do a good job on their own time.
Yes, agreed.
So this is more loosey-goosey morals in general versus the sexual conversations they're having.
I just think that's a bad thing to do, because you're not gonna actually see if you're sexually compatible.
Also, what a lazy friend. Like, you can't even do your own profile? Like, what's wrong with you? I think we're missing the point here.
So we're leaving. We're out the door?
No, I still don't think I would necessarily just be leaving, but I would definitely bust their balls about it.
I'd sit them down with their friend and be like, you two are codependent and weird. Like, what is going on?
Yes.
And you need to do your own. I don't know if we need to, like, give you some pep talks or, like, some things, some openers maybe, but you got to do this on your own.
Yeah. I think that sounds like a good solution.
I would leave.
You got high standards, Allison.
Exactly. She really does.
It just, everything about it is so yucky. And I just, all the deception, and it's all just feels like not for me. A hard pass.
Fair.
Okay. Our next game. Are you a terrible parent? You suspect that your child, 10, is copying their homework off of one of their classmates during play dates. So you sneak into their backpack to grab a worksheet. You then create your own worksheet that is nearly identical, except you add strange sentences to the instructions, including phrases like, horses like to eat their poop, and poop counts as a vegetable. You think this worksheet is due at the end of the week, so you wait to see if they notice, only to get a call from the teacher because they already turned it in. You now have confirmation that they do cheat, and you have to explain what happened to their confused teacher. Are you a terrible parent?
Oh my God, that is psychotic. I would retire as a parent and, like, just feel like a total idiot. I think meddling, maybe it's the kind of parents I had, but I think meddling to that extent, or even like a shadow of that extent, is just so dead wrong. You're a terrible parent.
I think you're a terrible parent because I think you could have chosen something other than poop. Why poop? I guess is my question. Why?
Because it's just historically funny to talk about poop, in my professional opinion.
Got
it is funny. That I will concede.
We used to think that one of our teachers didn't read our essays, so we would put stuff in the middle of the essays. But, like, it was never like that. It would always be like, and then Bugs Bunny was there. And we'd be like, is he going to notice? And he never did.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're a good parent, but maybe choose something that isn't poop.
That's baffling to me, Gabby.
I'm just so anti-intervention when it comes to, like, I would never, as a parent, read my kid's diary. I would never like rifle through their things or like interfere with their work or anything. The only thing, I mean, unless they were having very serious like mental health problems or like they were being abused or I could tell that something was deeply, deeply wrong. I'm not going to interfere in their like school lives or personal lives, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I know, but I just think if you are going to do it, like, don't say poop because then poop's like embarrassing. Like, just make it something innocuous. The cookies are burned or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the easier thing could have just been, hey, can you do your homework in front of me? You're right.
You're right.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, cheating on your homework is unacceptable also. I wouldn't go as far as to not interfere in any way. I just wouldn't take it upon myself in that way.
To do an elaborate, sneaky plot to
No,
expose
it's not.
them.
It's just not my personality. I'm a straight shooter for better or for worse, you know? I'd be like, you're cheating.
What if it's very stupid homework?
I guess I would be tempted, but I would ultimately never do that.
Yeah.
Okay, our final game. Would you forgive this liar? You're moving to a new city where one of your friends from college works as a realtor. You ask them to find a house for you and handle all of the paperwork because you are very important and busy. They say they found the perfect house and you ask if there are any issues with it. They say no and you agree to buy it. When you move in, you quickly discover that the house is haunted by 3 British hairdressers. When you ask your friend if they had heard anything about the house being haunted, they confess they kept it from you, but didn't think it was that big of a deal because the ghosts have always been friendly and there is a lot of square footage. Would you forgive this liar?
First of all, as someone who is constantly on Zillow for fun, I would absolutely never put any real estate tasks in anybody else's hands. So I feel like anything that comes after that is just kind of on you. But total liar. F that. That's what I think.
Our realtor didn't tell us that someone died in this house.
Yeah. How do you feel about it?
I feel fine about it. Mostly
And how'd you find out?
The neighbors. The night we moved in, we went and hung out with some neighbors who were out front, and they were like, "Oh, you moved into this X, Y, and Z house," and we were like, "What?" And I thought they were joking. I was like, "Oh, that's what I would do." The first, you know what I mean? If someone was just moved in, I would do that prank. And then multiple people were like, "You shouldn't have told them that." Blah blah blah. And I was like, "Okay, so this is a widespread prank that they're doing." But then the next day, the HVAC guy came and he was like, "Oh, the house where this happened." And we were like, "Oh no, so it is real."
Yeah.
I don't care about ghosts. We just stayed at a haunted hotel and they were like, this little woman sits at the edge of the bed. And I was like, I don't care. We'll fuck on the bed, whatever.
Yeah, but this is you're having to interact with these ghosts all the time. They always they're very chatty.
Oh, that is annoying. Do they ever just want to sit and watch TV or?
Sometimes, but they like to talk during the episodes.
Oh, forget it. Oh, it's over. I can't answer questions about The Sopranos.
Yeah, I would just be kicking myself for, again, putting that very important decision in anyone else's hands. What did I think was going to happen?
So you were anticipating the lie, and therefore you blame yourself, not your friend.
I blame myself, ultimately, yeah. That was a dumb idea.
Also pretty cool that all 3 were hairdressers, because maybe they can give you some cool tips.
Yeah.
What happened? How'd they die?
It was
a hairdressing accident? Is that what you're about to say?
A blow dryer fell in their group tub.
They were in a group tub?
Yeah.
They're polyamorous ghosts?
Feature. That's a cool feature of the house is there is a huge tub that can fit 3 people.
But a blow dryer could fall into it.
This is kind of dark, but electrocution in a tub is weirdly my biggest fear. So that would be terrifying to me. Yeah, a toaster falling in there or something like that.
Why would that happen?
I don't know. I think it's from Groundhog Day. You know how he tried to kill himself with putting a toaster in the tub? You're getting a glimpse into my nightmares here, but yeah.
Wow.
It's scary to me.
Well, thank you so much for playing and for joining us. Where can people find out all about your book and everything that you do?
So it's out August 9th. It's called Bad Sex, wherever books are sold, although I would recommend ordering it through your local bookstore. But you could also get it from, The Bad Place or Powell's or Bookshop or any of those places. And my website is The Other NWA. That is also theothernwa.com. And my Instagram handle is also The Other NWA. And I'm Nona at Twitter. So any of those places will have links and portals to my work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh my God, you're wonderful. We adore you here.
Thank you.
Stick around after the break. We'll be talking all about Gaby's engagement.
Hey guys, there's a brand new season of one of my favorite podcasts out now, and you have to check it out. It's a scripted country musical that is executive produced by Miranda Lambert, and it's called Make It Up As We Go.
The show follows a young female singer-songwriter named Charlotte Sales as she navigates the world of Nashville and the cutthroat songwriting rooms in which she is suddenly thrust.
This show is so unique, so cool, and stars talent like Garrett Hedlund, Elle King, Abby Anderson, Cord Overstreet, Shooter Jennings, and many more.
I can't stress enough how original this series is, not to mention that the soundtrack that accompanies it is beyond incredible and was written and produced by Shooter, Liz Rose, Scarlett Burke, Abby Anderson, and Elle King, to name a few. Check out Make It Up As We Go from Audio Up and Sirius XM, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to Just Between Us. It's time for topics.
XXXXXX, baby. Usually Melissa says baby, but we're not joined by Melissa today. We're joined by my fiance, Mal Blum.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know to say baby.
You don't have to.
Well, it's obvious you don't listen to the podcast.
To give Gaby privacy.
Wow.
It's intentional. I try not to listen so that they don't feel self-conscious about what they're talking about.
Well, Melissa is not joining us today because she's not feeling well. But I mean, she's here behind the scenes. But this is such an exciting episode, topic, time in our lives. Tell me everything. Let's be honest. I called you right after and I got the details, but tell the audience everything.
First of all, I went to leave on this road trip and I said goodbye to Allison and she said, "Can't wait to see your ring." And I was like, "Mal's not proposing, you dummy." And then she's like a canary in a coal mine, called the whole thing.
Canary in a coal mine. What? Wow. What a metaphor. Oh, wow.
I only knew that because you had said that you had asked Mal if you were getting engaged on the road trip, and Mal had said no. So then I was just goofing with you, but it turned out I was right.
Okay, so Mal, start at the beginning from your perspective.
Okay, so first we met. How much time do you have? I'm just kidding. Okay.
Yeah, how long have you known that this was your plan?
Yeah, so I mean we had talked about it before, but we weren't on any particular timeline, and I think I'm somebody who's really ambivalent in terms of I really struggle with decision making. I don't know if we've talked about that, Allison, but for example, it took me 10 years to decide to get top surgery kind of thing. And, I'm pretty famously a commitment phobe. So I was really oh no, what if it's the wrong decision? What blah, 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 and all this stuff. So I was really thinking about it for a long time before. I want to make sure before. And then as soon as I proposed, I was like, this was 100% the right decision. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Sometimes you just got to leap. Sometimes you got to leap. But yeah, we went on this road trip. I've been planning it for a while. Little things would come up and I'd be like, oh no, what if Gaby almost got a job and then the road trip was almost canceled? And I was like, uh-oh, but whatever. And then I was trying to pick a place on the road trip that would be good. So I was kind of location scouting from afar. And then I just called an audible and went to a totally different place because that's who I am.
You didn't know that was going to be the spot till an hour before.
Yeah. I was looking at Merrimack Caverns, and also we were staying at this really nice hotel in Eureka Springs that is a place that Melissa recommended. But then on the way to the hotel, I was like, wait a minute. We're driving past this whale that has this love story that we've been to before. It all sort of came together in my mind, and I was like, oh, no, this has to be it. This has to be it. So for like an hour, I'm driving to, I'm like, and I was like, Gaby, can we like, and Gabby's like, we already saw it. And I was like, yeah, but don't you want to like visit him? And like, and I had to kind of convince them, which I was like, oh no. And then on the way the whole time, actually, Gaby was watching old JBU videos to make TikTok content, which like worked out great. Worked out in my favor because I was like sweating and like hyperventilating and like, and also I had to like get the tag and put it on beans without Gab realizing, and like I don't know. There's a lot.
Because explain what happened with Beans' tag.
So I wrote "Will you marry me" on the tag, but actually, I had the one tag that I like had it, done in one of those little tag machines, and then I was like,
and the tag was a tuxedo.
It was a little tuxedo, and then I was like, maybe it's too small, and also I should do this myself. So then I got like a little beveler tool and I got a bigger tag and I wrote, in case you didn't see the first tag. And then I wrote it again because I wanted to
So there were
engrave it.
3 tags. One was a big tag that said, in case you don't see the first tag, which Mal engraved themselves with an arrow. Then I flipped that tag over and Mal had engraved themselves, G, will you marry me, M. Then it's like pointed to the other tag. Then I looked and saw the tuxedo tag and I turned it over and it was engraved professionally, G, will you marry me, M. So what a little peek into Mal's brain is that they were like, the tag is too small. So I have to have 2 tags pointing to the other tag just in case Gaby misses it.
Yeah.
And Gaby, did you notice any of the tags?
0. Notice none of them.
Also, for like 2 weeks, I was like making this ring box because I was like, for some reason, I got it in my head that I was like, I have to make the ring box. I have to make it.
They made it from scratch with wood and they painted it and they made the hinges. Yeah.
So, but it also coincided with like, I was having a little bit of a depressive episode and I also was hyperfixating on this cat that we've been taking care of. So like Gaby and Drew and everybody was just like, Mal's just outside with the cat all the time and like having a nervous breakdown. But really I was having a bit of a breakdown, but also I was working on the ring box, but like nobody knew that,
So after they proposed, Drew was like, oh, so they were outside working on the ring box. They weren't just sitting there silently petting the cat like we thought. Okay, we were worried about you, actually. So basically, so the blue whale, so we had gone to see the blue whale of Oklahoma, of Catoosa, Oklahoma, is this whale that in the 1970s, it's this big concrete whale. And in the 1970s, this guy, Hugh Davis, built it for his wife, Zelta, who was obsessed with whales and who collected whale figurines. And so he took years and built this huge whale. And it's really cute. And it's just like on this, like lake area, what a pond.
Yeah.
And
Used to be a swimming
and it
hole.
was like, and it was a swimming hole. And they ran it together. And it was like this testament to their love that he had built for her. And then they passed away. And then it was like at risk for going into disrepair. But the people of the town loved it so much that they fundraised. And now they run it as a tourist attraction. And they kept it going. You can't swim there, but they kept it going as like they didn't want to let it, die, basically.
Yeah.
So it's this like romantic story between these two people. And then also about this town coming together to like keep their love alive even after they've passed. So it's a beautiful romantic story. And Mal was like, we should go back and see the whale again. And I was like, we already saw it. And then Mal was like, yeah, and I'm fixated on every road trip. We have to go to different things. So I'm like, I don't want to see the same things. I want to see different things. And Mal is a nostalgic and sentimental person, so likes to see the same things. So I was like in my head being like, oh, great. So now we're going to be late to the hotel, the new hotel we're going to see because Mal wants to go see the whale again. And then Mal was like, but isn't it nice because we were there last year? We looked so different. Now you're like on testosterone and we'll take new pictures at the whale that are more updated. And I was like, okay, like I could be talked into that.
They're like, oh, pictures. So if you mentioned pictures.
Yeah.
Also later, Mal, you said that my willingness to be like, okay, fine, we'll go to the whale also made you feel like you wanted to propose to me because you were like, they don't even want to do it, but they'll do it for me. And like, that's that's really sweet. And that's so indicative of what Gaby's like. And like, that made you want to propose even more because I was like, fine, we'll go to the whale.
It was just like, I was like, yeah, the compromise of like, you're like, I don't see the point in this, but obviously you would like to go back. So let's go back, whatever.
And so then also Mal had convinced me prior to the road trip, Mal had said, we're going to make a lot of content for TikTok from the road trip. So every day on the road trip, at the end of the day, we'll make a video and we'll say what our favorite part of the day was and what we like most about each other. And that way we'll have these videos from the road trip. And I was like, oh my God, Mal is so cheesy. Fine. So I was like, so every day we were making these videos and they committed, like we made them every day. And then on like day 4, they were like, okay, so go set up, what would be fun is if we do it with the whale in the background, because we've largely done it with like the hotel in the background. So they were like, that's going to get boring. So let's do it with the whale in the background. So go set up, they bought a gimbal, which is like a tripod for the camera. So they were like, go set up the tripod and I'll take Beans to pee. And I was like, fine. So I set up the tripod. Then they go, further away. It's like too close to people. And I was like, oh my God, fine.
People were bothering us.
So I was like, so I go and I set it up. And Mal's, meanwhile, like, I think taking Beans to pee, but really they're putting the tags on Beans. Oh.
Well, I put them tags on him at the last rest stop, but I didn't want you to take him out of the thing and see them. So I was like, I'll get him. And then I was like, okay, Beans, it's go time.
And then these people, Mal like gets out of the car and I'm set up already waiting for them. And these people start talking to Mal, which Mal has one of those faces where people just start talking to them.
Literally, Allison, like this was like, people say that and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, okay, well, maybe I just don't shut it down. But like I was doing everything in my power to shut this down. And this woman was like, oh, well, you have to stop at like Will Rogers Memorial. And I was like, okay, I got to go. And she's like, really, it's worth a shot. Will Rogers, he was a
whatever,
radio guy. She started like talking. I was like, I don't care about Will Rogers. I gotta go, man.
You should have been like, I gotta propose, lady. Leave me alone.
I almost said it, but then I was like, I was afraid Gab would hear, or then the lady would be like, oh my God, and start talking to me more,
Strangers talk to Mal so much to the point that we were in Roswell and we stopped at a McDonald's because the McDonald's in Roswell is like alien themed. So we were like, we gotta see that. So we like rent. And I opened the car door to throw away old food that we had in the car. And while the car door was open, a woman drove up, opened her car door, and started talking to Mal through the car door.
She said, I want to talk to you.
And was like,
what?
And like
she
just started chatting with Mal.
And was like, I want to talk to you. She was like, I want to talk.
About what?
She said, I want to talk to you. You have New York plates. Like, where did you come from? Where are you going on your road trip? I've always wanted to go on a road trip. Me and my mom and I don't know, people just like talk to me.
I was gone for 5 seconds to run to throw something away. And a woman parked her car next to Mal and started talking to them. Like, this is Mal's whole life.
You can't leave me alone.
That's so wild.
So
did people react did people see the proposal at the whale?
Okay, so here's what happened with the people. Okay. And I want to say the reason for the travel vlog ruse is because Gab was very specific that they didn't want like a public like bunch of people.
I didn't want public, yeah.
Like they're like, I'm not the type of person who would ever want like my family waiting as a surprise or like,
a Jumbotron
or a Skywriter or whatever. So I was like,
you wouldn't want a Jumbotron? That's really strange.
No, I was like private. It has to be private.
But I also was like, they're gonna want video or photos of this. I know that they will. So how do I do that without having like somebody hide in the bushes? Right. So that's how I came up with the ruse.
It's brilliant.
Thank you. And then when we got out and the lady started talking to me, I was like, leave me alone, whatever. Then we started doing the thing. No one was there. And then these two people like walked up and they started kind of being like looky-loose. And I was like,
so we filmed it once. And then Mal said, you know what? I don't like all these people in the background. Let's film it again from far away. And so we moved and filmed it again. And I was like, oh my God, we have to start over. Like, I was like, this is so annoying. I want to get to that haunted hotel.
See, that's interesting to me because on the outside, it was like, I was like, oh, we started to talk. And I was like, what if we just move to that picnic table? Because like, I don't want anyone around us. And you're like, okay. And like, that's what the external was.
In my mind, I was like, haunted hotel. Want to get to the haunted hotel. Also, like 2 days before, we were driving and Mal started hysterically crying. And I was like, what's going on? And Mal was like, it's just like hard to like love someone so much and like was being really sweet. And I was like, oh, honey, whatever. And then they were like, that didn't like give you a clue that I was like gearing up to propose. And I was like, No, I was just like, it's a Tuesday. Mal's emotional. Like,
Yeah.
that's what they're like all the time.
Yeah, I was having a meltdown because I was like, it's really scary to like, merge your life with somebody else and like that, it's just like so vulnerable and like anything bad could happen at any time and like, like.
And I was like, yeah.
Yeah. God bless
like,
literal Gabby.
What a supportive partner you found in Gabby.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, babe, it is hard. Anyway, like, where are we gonna have dinner? And Mal
That's
was
for
like,
the vibe.
thank God for you. Like,
That's the vibe. Sometimes it's like, whatever. But then sometimes it's like, I'm my own worst enemy and I do need somebody to be like, stop it,
I'm not feeding this anxiety.
Right.
or they'll like have this anxiety where they'll be like, what if we break up in 9 years? And I'll be like, did you eat lunch today? Like, are you hungry? Like, so then they got on one knee and they proposed. Or then they said, look at Beans' collar. I looked at Beans' collar. Then Mal started crying. Then they immediately got to on one knee and then said, I probably should have looked up where this came from. It's probably problematic. I don't know why I'm kneeling. And I was like, incredible. And then said a bunch of really nice stuff, which honestly, not making content wise, but we were talking about this last night where I'm glad I was like iffy on filming, but I'm glad that they filmed it because I blacked out.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what Mal said. I don't know what I said. I don't know. So it's actually nice that we have the video. It's 12 minutes long. We've watched it, both of us, a couple times because it's like, oh, like I don't even remember. Like and you also like, you ask the dumbest questions because you're black. You're just like, so I was like, but what about Steffi's baby? And like Mal's sister is having a baby, like was having a baby like 3 days later. And I was like, what about won't the baby be jealous? Like what? Or like being like, who knows
You asked
about
if the baby, the unborn baby would be jealous of your engagement?
that we were stepping on the baby's arrival. Or like, who knows about this or whatever, and then like
the baby is
like
very jealous. Actually, it's been
actually she's been a real bitch about it.
Hey.
And
hey, that's my niece.
Sorry. No, she's actually very well behaved and like very quiet. But
She's a newborn.
Yeah, she's a newborn, but she's not like she's just very chill. So then Mal was like, the ring is my grandmother's, and then they showed me they had made the box, and then like all of it just made me really emotional. And then they told me, I said in the beginning, I think, but they told me that they asked their grandpa to use the ring, and then I was like, Marty knows about it. Yeah. And then we like, I don't even, we had to watch the video back. I like blacked out. I don't even know. We were kissing. We were like, this is crazy.
I know what I said.
You know what you said? What'd you say? Well, don't say all of it because it's secret. Some of it's secret.
Okay. I don't have to say.
Ooh.
Gab wanted to keep the actual stuff that was said, like, off the internet.
Yeah. So even the video that we've posted, we've not, said the words or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, when I got engaged, which worked out so well, neither of us remembered what was said during the actual proposal.
Right? You just
it is
black
like this
out.
weird thing where we were like, what did you say? What did I say? Like, we don't remember.
It's nice. It's cute on video because Mal goes, I forgot about this. We like saw in the video, Mal goes, you're really going to marry me? And I know. And then we FaceTimed our families. And
yeah, so Mal, had you told anyone that you were doing this or that it was coming up or anything?
Yes, a couple people. It was hard because Gab was like, Gab had specifically told me not to, if I was ever going to propose, not to get their parents' blessing because they think it's like a dumb practice, which
patriarchal.
I agree. But I was like, who would they want me to check in with? And I was like, Cheyenne, I guess.
So Mal checked in with my sister, and I noticed they went. Mal was like, "I need to talk to you privately," and they like went and talked privately, and I was like, "What
Cheyenne,
is this about?"
Can I be honest? I love her. She was the worst person to tell because literally, I texted her and I was like, "Hey, when you're at the house, can I talk to you privately?" In front of Gabby, she's like, "So you want to talk to me privately?" And I was like, "Can?" And then I had to lie and be like, "Yeah, it was about psychiatrists."
Yeah, you told me. I believed you. You said, "Oh, I just wanted to ask her about like for recommendations about her psychiatrist and some like private stuff about ADHD." And I was like, "Of course."
Literally, I will say every person I told had the most them reaction. So Cheyenne was like, I was like, so I want to talk to you about like, how do you, feel about this? I'm thinking about doing this thing. Like, do you have any thoughts, feelings, whatever? And she was like, I mean, you guys are already basically married. And I was like, okay. And she was like, and then she said, I forget what it was, but it was something like, what do I get to wear to the wedding? Or like, oh, does that mean I get to plan a bachelorette? Like, it was something that was like
Immediately about her.
Immediately on to the next thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But it was nice. I checked in with our couples therapist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Mal met with
did.
our couples therapist privately.
I did.
And what did you tell me you were doing? You lied. Oh, you told me you were having a Zoom meeting.
But we told Gabby that I was going to meet with her one-on-one. But Gabby didn't. And God bless you. You were just like, okay. Like, you were like, not interested in the reasons for that. Whatever. Like, just
I'm very trusting. Like, you were like, I wanted to talk to Cheyenne about psychiatry and meds and ADHD privately. And I was like, of course, honey, that's totally fine. Like, I trust you. You were like, I'm going to have my own session with our couples therapist. I was like, great. I think that's a really good idea.
She said it in front of us and was like, if either of you like wants to talk, privately at any point, are you both comfortable with that? And like, we were like, yeah. And I was like, sure, I would do. So she brought it up. So it was less suspicious. And then I'm trying to think who I told on my side.
Steffi.
Well, my family knew because I had to get the ring.
Oh, right.
I feel like I told some random people by accident.
Keely knew.
She was house sitting for us, and I was like, you want to see what I did? Whatever. Which I kind of felt bad because she just went through a breakup, and then so like it was this ADD thing where I was like, look, and then I was like, wait, was that inappropriate? I'm so sorry. And she was like, no, I love it. And I was like, phew.
And then Drew, you told Drew.
Told Drew because she's like good friends with both of us, and it's not that I was polling people, but I was like, who should I check in with? And also Drew had the most Drew reaction where she was like, I love this. You guys are basically like buying a house is way more serious than getting married. Like, you guys are such a great couple. And also like, how have things been lately? Like, like the most Capricorn, like, I think, yeah, you don't need my blessing. It's a good idea. But like, do you think it's a good idea? And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, now we have to we're talking about do we get a wedding planner? What do we do? It's also been.
Do you have a timeline
I think next
of
fall.
when you want to get married?
Next fall.
Next fall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a sore subject, but, do you have any tips?
Stay together. This is my biggest tip.
But I don't know. That worked out good for you.
That's true.
No, I have many thoughts, lots of feelings. Love to off mic talk to you all about the wedding planning process, options, different. I think my biggest thing is that you can do whatever you want. You might feel trapped into a lot of traditional choices, but you really don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
COVID has really changed, I think, people's expectations for weddings in a really cool way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I have tons of thoughts, tons of things to discuss.
Yeah.
I really liked your TikTok.
Oh yeah, your TikTok about us being, because we used to joke about that I was gonna get married first, even though I'm ambivalent about it. And then your TikTok was so funny and so unhinged. If anyone wants to go check out Just Between Us
So
Pod
funny.
on TikTok,
So funny.
it's very funny.
Yeah, but as multiple people pointed out, I was engaged.
You were.
first.
Absolutely.
So that's a huge win for me.
Let me tell you a secret about Gab, which is I think that they've got a persona, and it's a very good edgy persona. But inside that persona, they have all these squishy little feelings. Not as many as me, but they've got them, and they wanted to get engaged and have wanted to for a few years, though they probably won't admit it on mic, but they have.
I would say things like Mal would try to ask stuff or be like, oh, whatever. And I'd be like, that's so interesting of you to plan so far in the future when my hand is so naked.
Oh, that's such bullshit that you then act like, yeah, whatever. Who cares? You were jonesing for it.
It's a bit. It's a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Well, this is the ring for anyone wondering.
That hand isn't bare anymore, baby.
No.
That's right. It's adorned. So there's a story about the ring. Did you hear the story about the ring?
What is it?
About that it was your grandma's ring?
Well, yeah. Well, she had passed, and I was like, it was the first time I was like looking at her jewelry. So I was like, look at all this jewelry. Like, isn't it cool? Like, aren't these ones cool? And then Gab told me which ones they liked. But also, here's a little tidbit for you. My other grandmother died.
Oh, I'm so glad. I mentioned this up top briefly. I'm so glad we're going to get into this tea. Yes.
Okay.
What did your other grandma do?
My other grandma. So all my grandparents, like except for my step grandfather, all my remaining grandparents died during COVID, which sucks. But so Grandma Terry died right at the beginning of COVID.
So I never met Grandma Terry.
Which is a shame because she really would have liked you. And then Nan, Evelyn.
And I met Nan a bunch of times.
You did?
And then she died. Yeah, I met Nan. Nan knew this is what's fucked up is that Nan knew my things about me, was nice to me, asked about my family, whatever. Anyway.
Okay, so Nan died. She had her engagement ring and she bequeathed it to my 17-year-old cousin.
The one boy in the family.
Presumably because he is the next single male in her eyes that would be getting married, So
he doesn't have a girlfriend.
He doesn't even have a girlfriend. He's 17.
Well, he's 17 years old.
He's going into the military, like whatever. Anyway, I didn't want it. And like, to be frank, like they didn't have a very happy marriage. Like, sorry to spill the family tea, but like, that's like very, they had a good marriage, but it was kind of weird. I knew that I was going to propose soon. And like, so when they were like, oh, well, Max got the engagement ring, I was like, all right, whatever. But then I knew that one of Grandma Terry's rings would suit you better.
Fit what I asked for, which is a dark stone. So
I loved her style. I really did.
Yeah. So whatever.
Yeah.
Go Team Grandma Terry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody has their pros and cons.
Pros and cons.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so happy for both of you, and please consider me when hiring your wedding planner.
Yeah,
are you working as a wedding planner?
Sure, why not?
Melissa is an ordained minister.
I know. Together, the JBU pod will get you two married.
You were like, I'm so excited to become a wedding podcast. And I was like, dear Lord.
Oh, yeah,
I love
baby.
Melissa, can you do like rabbinical stuff?
I've never actually married anyone, but I can figure it out.
How hard could it be?
Right.
No.
Melissa's like reading phonetically, like Baruch Atah Adonai.
Hey, they spell it out for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Allison can do Hebrew stuff.
Oh, yeah, baby. I could marry you. That'd be really fun for just me.
Just doing bits. Bits the whole time. Allison's like, do you take Mal? And you're like, yeah. And Allison's like, oh, that's rich.
Yeah. I'm crying.
And then,
Leave a comment if you want me to marry Gabby
and Mal. That's just like
Mal.
that's like the perfect finale of the sitcom. Like that's like, you know what I mean? Like that's the series finale.
well, that's how you know it's a comedy and not a tragedy.
Exactly.
Exactly. We end at a wedding and not a
Good
funeral.
Lord.
Well,
Thank
we
you
all
so
end.
much for joining us, Mal.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to our guest, Nona Willis Aronowitz.